Right then, so in this video we're going to look into a pivotal moment in my career where I finally figured out how to drive a real race car fast in the wet. Very quick one though, and it's a bit off topic. I have set up a shorts channel, so if you fancy seeing some content that's a bit short and quick, then that is in the description below. The link to that is in the description below. If you have any recommendations for that channel, then of course let me know in the comments below to this video, any video, and I'll take them on board. But yes, back to the video, and let me set the scene for you very quickly. So the British GT Championship, the penultimate round, it was at Snetterton, it was wet, and it's the final stint of the race. I'm in the hot seat, and we're going to see what unfolds and what happens. So yeah, without further ado, let's get into it. And so you join me in the pits, about to leave the pits for the second stint of the race, or my first stint of the race, but Michael's done half an hour. It's an hour long race, so I'm about to do half an hour as well. And immediately there is an issue. So I can remember it. My right seatbelt strap, you can't really see it, but it's digging underneath my hands device, which when it's that tight is kind of painful, and it's just not comfy, and you want to be 100% comfy when you're driving one of these cars. So out the pits, and it's a race, so you got to get on it straight away. No time for getting back into the swing of things. I mean, you do to an element, but you still have to be on it. And the tyres are in blankets as well, so they do come out fairly warm, but at the same time it's wet. They're going to be colder than where the window is, so you see there I'm turning the wipers on just to get a bit more vision. And on the exit of this left-hander, you'll see I'll go for the belt again because I try and sort it out, but the risk is if I accidentally turn the turnbuckle and then it all comes off, I've got to come in and it's race over. So I was very careful when I was fiddling with the belts. But anyway, let's chat about the context of the video. So the British GT Championship, till this point, we'd been struggling in the wet. In the dry, no problem. Poles, wins, podiums. In the wet, if you saw my last video, which is in the card above, you'll see where we were going wrong. And it cost us the championship in the long run. But in this video, this was the race, this was the moment where we overcame those issues, or I did at least, because I'm showing you the onboard of me. And you see there I'm going for the belt again. But I personally figured out a quicker way to drive the car in the wet. The team developed the setup over the course of the weekend. Snetterton all weekend was wet, practice, qualifying race, both races. So the team developed the setup so it was quicker and more drivable in the wet. And you'll see that through this video. If you go and watch the last video and then this one, it's like a different car. If you look at my inputs, it's crazy. And to be honest, it's not too dissimilar in terms of the conditions. It's not that wet, but it's slippy, and Donington was the same. So, as I say, the penultimate race of the year, the championship's on the line, and I came out, in this particular instance, I came out 1 minute and 9 seconds off the lead. So we're going to see how much ground I can make up in half an hour to get back towards the front. And you can see there in front of us we've got a McLaren lapping a GT4 Aston Martin, and on the exit the Aston almost runs wide, but we're going on the inside. We want to get through these cars as quick as possible. So the GT3 McLaren there, that's going to be for position. The GT4s obviously aren't, so we need to make sure we stay with that McLaren. And the McLaren in the wet in real life, notoriously not very strong, too stiff. You can't have the highs without the lows in most cases, so it's really quick in the dry, but in the wet it wasn't as strong. And up the inside of both GT4s, lovely happy days. Going a bit deep in this one, but unlike the sim, you've got to drive offline, especially at Snetterton. It's one of those tracks where there's rubber, loads of rubber on the racing line, so anywhere off the racing line you can have a ton of grip in the wet. And you try to stay off the curbs, but in some cases, as I figured out through the stint, the more I used of some of the curbs, the more track I used, track limits, it actually gained you a fair amount of time. So yeah, we actually have 17 laps over the course of this half an hour stint. So Michael, I mean, it's an hour race, 28 laps, you should do 14, but I think Michael got to a point where the tyres for him were falling off the edge of the cliff, that they thought, let's box him early and see, if we adjust the pressures, send me out on a new set of wets, then you know, I might get a bit of an undercut. So I end up doing 17 laps, Michael did 11, and we are actually catching this blue Macca in front, which, to be honest, we weren't all weekend. We were miles off the other McLarens. So at this point I'm thinking, that's encouraging, although from the Donington race, I remember, just because you're quick at the start of a stint doesn't mean you're going to be quick at the end of it. So that was in my head still. So I was driving very within myself to not overheat the tyres, driving offline quite a lot to try and find a bit of water, even though if you look, there's not really too much. And you can see going into turn 1 then. Let's have a little look at the laps. So third gear, turning quite early, let the car wash out, and then it grips up offline. And we gained quite a lot there on the entry to the Macca in front. Braking offline, going really deep, going across the racing line down to first gear, really sharp turning, and then get on the power. Short shift as well, because otherwise the TC kicks in, you lose a ton of time on the exit. Nice wide line for this left one. Don't really want to be using the curb on the exit because it's super slippy. And in ACC, for example, you can. So braking offline again here for this next left-hander. This infield section is so tricky in the dry, let alone in the wet. Offline. Oh, bit of oversteer there on the exit. So I didn't straighten up the car enough before getting on the power. So I've noted that. I'll learn that for the next lap. And then here, going not really that wide on the exit. But I think later in the stint, I see other cars doing it. I'm like, well, let's give it a go. Why not? Oh, that corner. I remember that corner in the wet all weekend, you know, on the exit. There was so much rubber. You just couldn't get the power down. So all weekend we were flicking between TC settings, ABS settings, setup. So if we're talking about, you know, what changed from Donington to this race, and there was a few wet sessions in between. There was a wet session at Brands Hatch on the Friday. There was race 1 at Snetterton, which was wet. You know, the setup, it went a certain direction, and it got generally softer from front to rear, so the tyres would do more work, whereas before it was too stiff, and the tyres would just skate across the tarmac because they couldn't actually dig into the ground because, yeah, the car was generally too stiff. The balance was better, so, you know, the way it felt from entry to mid to exit, from front to rear, felt just more hooked up. So not only was it you can see that the McLaren goes in the pits. I remember he got a penalty for speeding in the pits, if I remember correctly. It might have been something else, but anyway, he got a penalty. And anyway, we'll get to the setup in a little bit, but let's cut to the next exciting part of the stint. And so a few laps later, going down the back straight, underneath the bridge, into the fast left, you'll see there's a slow GT3 Macca in front of us, and that is one of the Pro-Am lineups, so that is an AM in the car right now, probably just left the pits, cold tyres, getting into the swing of things, but we can't let him hold us up because we're on a mission. So through the bomb hole, funny name corner in it, but up the inside of that Macca into Coram, up the inside, on the wet patch, so it's a bit slippy, as you can see there from my wheel inputs, but got it done. And you can see the next GT3 on the road is just around the corner. That's a Bentley, so at this stage looking decent, you know, nothing, you know, there wasn't a big breakthrough in pace just yet. My best lap was a 2:08.9, but let's see what happens. Once again then, on the back straight, going underneath the bridge, you can see that Bentley we mentioned a minute ago is right in our eye line now. Going through the fast left, into the slow right, we're just carrying more speed on the entry and the apex of the corners. Going into the bomb hole, we're going to take a slightly tighter line than the Bentley, but we're carrying more speed. And into Coram, kind of similar to the McLaren, he doesn't really get in our way, he goes to the outside, and we're carrying more minimum speed. We can just go up the inside. Didn't really lose, if I can speak, any lap time in that particular move, which is perfect. And we've got a nice clear track ahead of us to get our head down, try a few new things. I think at this stage in the race we were 6th or 7th, so we've gained 3 positions already, so it's looking good. So the things I'm going to try in clear air: new lines, new braking points, just different technique of driving in some of the braking zones and some of the corners. But let's see how we ended up driving towards the end of the stint. And so lap 25 of the race and lap 14 of my stint, you can see we've got a bit of GT4 traffic coming towards us. So we had a good 6 or 7 laps there with nothing. No GT4s, no GT3s, a lot of clear air just to try a few different things, make a few mistakes, but not lose too much lap time. So up the inside, oh, up the inside of the Supra, but we almost understeered into him because of the racing line being wet. And it's got wetter now, a little bit wetter, but not too much wetter. And this really low grip zone, we managed to get a bit of speed on him on the exit because we're a GT3 and we're quicker. Using the outside here to get a decent exit onto the back straight, although it's a bit compromised from the GT4, but we're quicker in a straight line, so we don't have to worry about him. And we've got another GT4 in the distance, you can see there. I think that is a McLaren, if my eyesight doesn't deceive me. Under the bridge, you can see... Oh no, it is. My eyesight does deceive me. It's a Mustang. How did I miss that? It's a huge car. And, yeah, the difference in speed in the wet isn't as great as in the dry with a GT4, but because you can't use the aero as much, but it's still convincing, especially in some of the corners like this one, where you are going fairly quickly. So I didn't want to take any risks, you know, I didn't want to make any contact, cause any damage. You can see actually, even though it was a COVID time, there was a fair few people watching. So maybe in Snetterton the restrictions weren't as bad. So going into this next lap, if I remember correctly, this is the fastest lap of the race for us. And it was 6/10 off Phil Keane in a faster Lamborghini in these conditions. And the Lambo was a quicker car in the wet, there's no doubt about it. So turn 1, you can see there we pretty much nailed it. Going into turn 2, braking at the 100, or no, the 150. So the ABS is engaged, down to first, really aggressive on the braking, sharp turn, so we turn it really, really quickly. Short shift on the exit, into the left-hander, using a wide line into second gear, on the power the whole way through to keep the minimum speed up. Don't use the curb on the exit, get good traction. Going offline for the braking into this next one. A brake in about, again, 150, something like that. Or 130 even. My references are all over the place. Down to first gear, short shift on the exit, nice straight exit as well, so we're less likely to break traction. Going into the infield section, a wide line, using all the curb on the exit now and the runoff, so we can carry more speed, and then into this really slippy part of the track, so down to first gear, rotate the car really quickly, going deep, and then short shift on the exit. That particular lap, we didn't get any wheel spin or anything, so really, really good. Down to second, a wide line, like turn 3. Bit of oversteer on the exit, so we would have lost time there, but still, we carried good speed, so we probably gained a bit on the entry. Down the back straight, we're going to brake online for this next one. Down to second gear, keeping a fairly dry line here. Offline slightly for the right, avoiding all the curbs on the exit, by the way, when there's a traction zone, because there's just no grip on the curbs. They're paint as opposed to tarmac. And then the bomb hole, we've run a little bit wide, but we did carry quite a lot of speed on the entry. Quorum, third gear, and it's just all about how brave can you be? How much can you trust the car's going to grip? And that's, we were fairly brave there. Maybe it could have been a little bit braver, but on the exit, we get a wheel on the curb, so we could have had a better exit, but again, carried good speed into the entry phase. So there was time in the lap, don't get me wrong, but over the line, it's a 2:06.0, which, as I say, 6/10 off the fastest lap of the race, who was set by Phil Keane, the pro Lamborghini driver, in a Lamborghini which had less weight. It was a quicker car. And for the majority of the stint, there was 3 or 4 or even 5 laps where I was in the mid to low 206s. So it was a strong pace to have consistently, and I was at the start of the stint trying things. You know, not all of it would work, but some of it would be a big breakthrough moment, like turn 2 braking online, and it would feel horrible. I'd go in really deep, but it was quicker. It was more aggressive. It was quicker. It didn't feel as smooth or as clean, but it's not always how it works. So once I'd figured it out, I could put a few laps together that were I thought would be the quickest way round Snetterton in these conditions, and it led to a fairly good pace. So, and I'm using more of the track, I'm more brave, I'm getting more committed. The tyres are in the window. We talked about the setup briefly earlier, that's gone forward. So everything just clicked, and the pace was really good. And you can see that we almost understeer onto the grass there, but yeah, I was really, really happy with the breakthrough laps in this stint, from being fairly average or even below average in the wet to being the quickest car on track. So we're in the final corner then on the last lap of the race, coming home for a P6 finish. So from where we started, good progress. We had a very clear track towards the end of the stint. and we set a 2:07.1 on the last lap, but we take the checkered 6th place. And to give you an idea of how good, or how much of a breakthrough moment that was, I left the pits 1 minute and 9 seconds off the lead, and I finished 25 seconds behind the leader. So in 17 laps we made up 44 seconds to the lead car, which yeah, I mean, at the time I thought, oh, it's decent, but 44 seconds, yeah, we must have nailed it. The setup, the bits I found in the driving, overall, it was a huge step forward. And, if you compare it to the last video we looked at in the wet at Donington, jumping in, no practice, no car development, it was a very open and honest video as to how wrong it can go if you don't get it right and you don't have the prep. But, this video is testament that, you can start off that bad, and with a bit of prep, with a bit of work and figuring it out and patience, you can get there. And I'm confident now that if I jumped into a race car tomorrow in the wet, I'd be alright. So yeah, having this at the end of the season, the final wet race of the year, it makes me sleep better because I know I can do it in the wet. And I could in karting, I could on the sim, so I was bemused that in a real car I couldn't do it, and I could, it just took a bit of work. But that is a video, so I hope you enjoyed, and do give it a thumbs up, sub up to the channel if you did enjoy the video, and I'll see some of you in the comments below. I'm sure there'll be a few interesting comments after that one, but yeah, for this video that is it, and until the next video, I'll see you soon.